So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for January 22nd, 2020. We'll follow our standard agenda, which was in the issue opened for the meeting, which was issue 804. And so before we get started, does anybody have any announcements that they would like to share? If not, I will mention that it's the board meeting this week. So if there's anything that you think we should bring up to the board or questions that you had on that front, let me know. Taking a quick look at the project we have with things to be brought to the board, there are a couple things. One was our request for build resources. A quick update on that is, I had gotten some suggested people from some of the board members who might get involved. Unfortunately, they didn't pan out, so I'm going to go back and have that on the agenda for the meeting this week again to hopefully get some additional suggestions. And we'd asked, we made a private request to get some help on another issue, which we don't have an answer yet, but again, that'll be on the agenda for the meeting this week too. Okay.
I have a quick announcement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nazca, I almost forgot, and it's really just following process, which says that when people are successfully nominated to become collaborators, it's supposed to be announced in the meeting. So this Friday in most time zones, I will be onboarding Robert Nagy, Ronag, who has done a lot of work on streams and whatnot. And I would love to have a second TSC member there for the onboarding. So if you're interested in participating, shoot me an email or a private message on Twitter or something, and I'll let you know what time it is, and you can figure out what time that will be in your time zone and if it will work for you. That's all. Thanks.
And you want a second person just for more different views, comments, suggestions, or any particular?
Yeah, I think I've been, when I onboard people, and I've probably onboarded more than anybody probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I'd say, but I could be wrong about that. But people get a very trot-centric view. They get a lot of my opinions and stuff, and having a second person there might provide a more well-rounded answer to their questions and things like that. I think it's just a good idea to have more than one viewpoint. We're not a monolithic committee, and and I definitely on some issues represent a very particular viewpoint.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Just was understanding that clarifies it for me. Thank you.
It also means that if I have to drop off, that we don't have to cancel the session. But that's a secondary concern.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any other announcements? No. Okay. So we'll move on then to on the CPC front. I guess a couple things I could mention since we don't have Mateo. There is discussion about the travel, like there's an issue for the travel fund that was being discussed. There was some concern about the budget. I think Miles has worked with Mateo to address that concern. We do have on the agenda to get a statement from the board in terms of, the general ask is like confirmation that if we need more, the budget will be increased. So we hope to formalize an answer to that to address that concern. The other one is, as part of the discussion of that issue, there were some suggestions that projects may want to request funds for particular events and then manage the money for those events themselves. And what was suggested and seems to be okay, nobody's objected anyway so far, is to try and get the current proposal PR landed so that we have something in place for the travel fund. And then as an extension, PR in the ability for projects to basically make that request. The idea being the CPC would, the project would say, we're having, say, a Node collaborator summit. We'd like, this much money to cover travel. The CPC would say, sure. And then the project would have their own process for reviewing and approving those requests. So if you have thoughts, comments, concerns about that, I'd suggest you jump in and comment in the issue. The other thing I can mention is that.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you
yeah,
please
go ahead.
promote Anatoly?
Oh, yes, thank you. The other thing that's going on that I would encourage people to get involved in if they have, thoughts, comments, concerns, is around the code of conduct. We had a proposal that was about to move to stage 3 for the code of conduct at the OpenJS level. At the collaborator summit, there were, and this will be like a very Michael-centric perspective, there are a bunch of additional new ideas that were proposed in terms of like, should we have, new ideas beyond what were captured in that issue, in terms of should there be things like, foundation-wide bans or foundation-wide moderation. The current proposal was very much, projects do their moderation, but there's an escalation path to the foundation, but stopped it there. So long way of saying that there's a team being put together to define the scope of what we need to do on, trying to land an MVP, and then starting the discussions on what extensions might be worthwhile, useful, beneficial across the foundation and across the projects, and what projects, the projects would think are a good idea and agree to, and so forth. So again, if you have strong thoughts, concerns, that's the great place to get involved and express those and have them factored into what will be proposed going forward. Any questions before I move on? If not, okay, let's move to what we had tagged for the agenda. So the first thing that's tagged is the one we should do the first anyway, so that we can let our guest move on. And it's related to 30.241 add run-kit embeds. This issue actually was closed, but there is another issue I think that was pointed out, which is still open. And it's related to adding run-kit embeds to the documentation. There was some discussion last week, some questions, concerns. So, we asked, and Tomalski has agreed and is here to, hopefully give us an overview and answer some of those questions. So I don't know whether, Tomalski, do you want to kind of give an overview of how it works first, or do you think answering like specific questions, diving into specific questions, how do you think this should work best?
I'm happy to just give a quick, in case anyone doesn't have context, and then happy to answer any questions after that, if that makes sense.
Sounds good to me.
So just Tomalski is my last name. Francisco is my first name. Just
Sorry, yeah.
So this was actually something that went through the whole, like, I guess, ComCom approval thing a little while ago, and it was an open pull request for a little while, and basically just waiting for us to push some updates that are actually going to go in this week. But the basic idea, like a year and a half ago or two or something, there's this big kind of like website redesign initiative, and that was broken up into like smaller initiatives. And like from the perspective of documentation, one of the things we wanted to provide was, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if like all the sample code and stuff actually ran, and not just for like the current docs, but you could go to any version of Node and they all ran that specific version and stuff. And so this PR actually is kind of a very small test run, specifically to be able to test these updates that we had made specifically for Node. It just is one example in the crypto library, and then it's just verbatim the sample code that's already there. It'll just have a run button. You'll be able to run it and like see it actually take place. And then based on that, the idea was we can kind of start to do more, whether more means just enabling more sample code or getting more creative with the way it's presented or whatever. But the initial thing was just to have something kind of live. Now the PR itself is kind of doing a little bit of double duty, because I mean, that code had just not been changed forever. And while I was in there, I just did some stuff like the syntax highlighting is now just compiled. So, you know, if you load the site with this PR request committed, like, and you have JavaScript turned on, like, you'll actually get a better experience, because like the site doesn't actually need JavaScript anymore, ironically enough. And, you know, if you have JavaScript turned off, Runket just doesn't show up. You get the same experience as before, a little better again, because it's syntax highlighted now instead of not. If you have JavaScript turned on, you'll get it with a run button and you'll actually be able to try it. And just to give some context into like, you know, the stage one versus like the things that we actually want to be able to do in the future, one of the big kind of impetus behind this is essentially a way to get people more involved earlier without having to put in a lot of personal effort. And a really great example of that is, you know, whenever there's a nightly or whenever like a V8 ships like a new syntax feature or something, the way to try that is you have to go download the nightly, install it. You know, NVM doesn't support nightly, so it really is like a, you know, something outside of what the normal workflow that people might have to do. You try it, you might submit some bugs, but I think a lot of people kind of like don't end up doing that. The place we want to get to eventually is, wouldn't it be really cool if not only is there a nightly kind of binary for Node, but there's nightly docs. And if you go to the nightly docs, they're all running the latest nightly Node. And so you can try all the new syntax features, whatever. It's really easy to just follow a bug right from there. So you get people kind of able to try all these things without having to put in like a lot of personal commitment. So that's a very brief summary of like kind of both what we're trying to ship right now, which is again, just turning on that one crypto sample code, and the kind of like longer term plan that was discussed back in those meetings back in the day.
Right, just one quick question for context. Like I understand that there's like been an initiative looking at the website. And this is kind of different. Like the docs are not part of that website right now. So has it already been used in the website itself as well? Because
as far as I know, like not much ended up coming out of the website in general. There was like the node.dev thing that came out, but like this was certainly something that was discussed a lot. And you know, it's part, the source is not generated, I guess, from the same place, but from a user perspective, they're all the same website, if that makes sense.
It was not added to the website. It's that's what the PR is about. So I mean, like there's no the docs aren't generated on the website. They're generated in the core repo, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. I guess, but there are other things like guides and samples on the website, right? So
yeah, there's no run kit on the website yet.
Okay, that was my question, because I could easily have seen that, you know, we went ahead and said, okay, let's use this. We've proven it out, and it's on the website, because the team looking at the website is a different group.
Yeah, sorry. So if you
go
look at those
documentation, right?
Yeah, so if you look at the I mean, I don't know, the meeting notes, like the initial plan was like, oh, what if we do this like huge redesign? We have all sorts of interactive docs and stuff. And I think I can, you know, we can spin up there's a repo that has like the template site that used RunKit and stuff. That just ran into a bunch of like, we don't have any content for this. So we then fell back to like, well, we do have a lot of content in the API docs. And like, again, from a user perspective, they're all the same docs. Why don't we just kind of, you know, put our toes into the water with this, as opposed to like this weird chicken and egg problem where like, yeah, we want like all this cool technology, but then like, you know, it bifurcates three ways into like, what technology do we use to make the site, like React or Vue or whatever? What's the content for the site? And then separately, do we have RunKit or not, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that's not going to make me a lot of friends, which is that if you want to actually see it hit the light of day, the core repo and or the website repo are the places to implement this. And the website redesign is not something that, you know, like I don't know if it's ever going to complete. It seems pretty well stalled to me, although every time I say that out loud, someone emerges to say, oh no, it's still going on, but I don't actually see evidence that they're having meetings and that stuff's actually happening. So I think that the simplest way to get this into the website is to do it in our current docs. Now, the concerns that seem to come up are privacy concerns, and like we don't have Google Analytics even on the site because we don't want to share people's data. And the other one is, what will happen if JavaScript is broken, or are we adding another, which you covered before, are we adding another dependency that might cause degradation for some subset of users or some users in some conditions. And I think, I haven't followed closely the privacy stuff, but other than that, I'm pretty comfortable with like, just throw this on the website and see what happens, and we can always take it out. It's been sitting there for 1.5 years now since we talked about it, and that seems like a long time. So.
Yeah, I've pasted the list of things that came up last time. So I think we have answered the first one, which is like, what happens if there's outages? So that means it just, I think is our understanding is that it just defaults to as if it wasn't RunKit enabled in the first place, right?
Yep.
Okay, so.
Do you want to just go through them? I mean, I think I answered a few others there, but
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to get the chat back open. I closed it and now. Here we go.
Right.
So yeah, so the tracking and the tracking stuff again, like I would like to in the bug, or sorry, it's pull request, when we ship this thing in a couple days, just direct you guys to it. Everyone can just go and check their cookies before and after, and like it should be completely trackerless. I guess I don't know how to answer the redirecting, and do we want to warn? I guess I mean, I'll just skip to the last one, and I think that these middle two will be more straightforward, not yes or no. Or I can just answer like, yeah, we want track. But from the make optional thing, like, I guess I don't know, like, there's no like site-wide preferences like that introduce a cookie. Like, from the perspective of the user, it's like the exact same code snippet, except under there's now like a run button. So like, I don't feel, again, I wholly admit that I am biased or whatever, but like one of the big things we're trying to do with a site is like make like deliver on the client side promise of JavaScript on the server, right? Why was JavaScript like one of the big first languages for most people? Because you can just drag a file into the browser and it just works. You don't download anything. You don't need a compiler or whatever. And we kind of want to deliver that same experience for like, kids who like hit Node.js.org for the first time from their Chromebooks in school, just hit run, right? Like, and I think that the idea is to like have a pretty big separation between like a bunch of other languages that just can't do that and Node. So, I mean, from that perspective, I would like it to just be like on, like, I don't see what is lost given that like you can just now edit the code, right? As opposed to before where it's static code, but I'm certainly open to the possibility that that's not a shared opinion.
I have a naive question. When you see an embedded YouTube video in another website, right? It always gives you a button to view it on YouTube.com. Can we not do the same thing? And then when you click on that, if you want to see it run, you go to a completely different website and you see it run there. Is that completely off base?
You can definitely do that, and then you wouldn't even need RunKit. I guess you could just send it to whomever. I mean,
well,
I
no,
guess,
because you'd have to copy paste that kind of thing, right? Whereas this would be sort of better integrated, right? So, because yes, you can just copy the code, but then it may not be.
No, I mean, I think he's saying that you could link to there's plenty of JavaScript playgrounds that you could link to that
right.
You can have the code saved there, like a code pen or whatever.
Right, but then every time we update our docs, we'd have to tell them, hey, we updated our docs. Go ahead, scrape our website. Like basically syncing is what I'm thinking, right? Like,
yeah. So like one of the features of RunKit is that they're, unlike other things, it's not like you type the code, you get some hash, you then put the hash link in there. RunKit does take the code from the page, and as such, like, the code lives in your repo. There's no syncing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
We can, I guess, just base 64 the code and pass in a query parameter. But I mean, to me, I guess the issue for me is like from just a usability perspective, if I'm reading through the docs and like, for example, the crypto library where there's 10 examples, I'm just going to want to hit run and see what happens and then scroll down. I don't think I'm going to want to open 10 tabs and go there and then come back and that sort of thing. I mean, so to answer your question, that is completely feasible and doable, and it would be easy. I don't even think it would necessarily require like a compile step. It could just, when you click the link, just look at the element before it, base64 it, send it to us, and then we create a new notebook. To me, like in this,
it is.
I don't want users coming to Runkit, as ironic as that sounds. Like a big part of a big differentiation with Runkit is like we want you to keep your users on your site.
Okay, but okay, that's valid. But as what about as a stepping stone, right? Like since we have these privacy concerns, broadcasting information that's already public is not a problem, right? And then it does go to your website, and then eventually we may warm to the idea of running this embedded rather than going to an external website. But could this not be an in-between step, or is it not worth? Is it not worth?
I mean, it's work.
That helps though, right? Like it. I'm not sure that helps because it still means that like if you're concerned about users being redirected to another site, it still does that. I'm wondering more like if it's around awareness that, one of the potential concerns is, okay, you're now running code that didn't come from the Node.js project. It's coming from somewhere else. And I know that that's actually kind of a common thing you see in other places where even like on some sites, when you click on a link that's going outside the site, it gives you a warning and says, hey, you're leaving this site. Just be aware this is no longer the Node site. This is now the blah, blah, blah site, right? So that the users know that they're interacting with somewhere else. I don't know if it's feasible at all that like the first time you click on one of the things you want to run, it just pops up a little thing that says, hey, if you want to run these live, this is provided through blah, blah, blah. Therefore, be aware it's outside the scope of the Node.js project or whatever disclaimer we wanted. You said, okay. And now, things just run as they did, but the users are aware that, any code that they run, that's what's happening.
Yeah, that sounds okay for starters, I think, right? Because like, why not? It makes it clear that we are worried about such things on the one hand, right? And they can still run the code on the other hand, and it's not that much clicking around, right?
I was thinking like a one-time,
Oh yeah, one
Francisco,
time.
you can tell us whether it's feasible or not, like, and then other people can comment whether it addresses concerns. But like the
Well, I would
first
need to
time
store
that
a
you would
cookie
go,
though.
yeah, I guess to know if it was the first time.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of this stuff is like trading. I don't know what their concerns are, but like, for example, the like link out of the site and not put the embed at all feels a lot more like an advertisement to Runkit for me. It's like it's a call to action to leave Runkit as opposed to like the
That's why I'm
embedded
saying
thing.
like the link to go out doesn't. I
Well,
was just
right, and I
looking
guess
like a way for people to opt in. Like it might even not. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a link out to Runkit or anything, but something in our docs that says maybe when you come to the docs, like, hey, if you want to be able to run code, is there some way we can let the users opt into it? So if they're worried about, running JavaScript code from somewhere other than Node.js, they can say no and it just doesn't run. Just brainstorming. I don't know.
Part of me, I don't want to be cavalier about this, but part of me feels like, if you're concerned about running code running JavaScript from a different domain than the one that you're going to, I don't know. I guess it depends. I don't know, but it seems like every site is going to be every site on the internet is going to be downloading JavaScript from CDNs and stuff like that. Or is this different? This is like third-party JavaScript that would be. I don't know. It's not clear. It's not clear to me how this is different from loading jQuery from a CDN.
Right. Francisco, it is different. Like the code actually runs somewhere else, right?
I'm not sure. There seem to be two different issues. One is like there's a script tag to just bootstrap the little thing that puts an iframe in there, the code that runs there, I think should be supremely not an issue, because like the whole point is, yeah, you spin up a container, you run the code somewhere else. So like that seems like less troublesome than like code that runs in the client, unless I'm misunderstanding. But like it runs real Node, right? The whole idea is that you can require any package and like write files, read files, do whatever, right? We want to provide a real Node experience, not like a simulated one.
Right. So the code's not running in their browser at all, is what you're saying.
Right.
Right. And then I guess the only, like, I'm just thinking of, potential, because we don't have everybody, what people could be concerned about. Like if I type in something and I think that like the only, the site that's seen that code is the Node, somehow related to Node, my code is actually run somewhere else, right? So like if you wanted to scrape and keep track of all the code that people write in those little boxes, you could, right?
I mean, yeah, I could. We don't
Not saying you
specifically.
don't, not saying you do.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, yes, if you go in there and you paste your GPG key, like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, like something like that. I mean, I'm not saying you should, but it's. So yeah, it's, I guess from our, Rich, on our front, like, do we have any, is that a concern at all? Do we need to warn people, or is it just like, it just doesn't matter, right?
Oh, wait a second. I guess I didn't understand one thing. So when you run this thing, right, can you afterwards play with it and modify it?
You can continue playing with it and modifying it on the site itself. If you want to save it for later, you can either download it or you can click save, and then you can save it as a notebook on RunKit.
Okay,
but like, otherwise, if you hit refresh, you lose it.
Okay, so then I think in terms of pasting or inadvertently pasting in sensitive data into this playground in which you are now, I think maybe what we need to make clear is that if you make any modifications to the code which you have now imported into this playground, this is no longer the Node.js code, and that needs to become clear. Like as soon as if you backspace out even one character, that's it. You've broken the magic. And that needs to be pointed out to the user, like, okay, this is no longer Node.js code because you changed it.
Wait, just to understand correctly, when they edit it, you want me to put up an alert saying you edited it? I guess I don't understand.
Yeah, because we provided a snippet of code in our documentation. If you change that snippet of code, it's no longer the code from our documentation, right?
But they know that because they changed it.
I know, but do we want to make sure that they don't remember this as having copied that code from nodejs.org and then why doesn't it work or something like that, and they forget that they edited it or whatever, like.
But that's only it, like, so you'd have to edit it, immediately copy the code, and then think you got it unedited. Like, again, if you refresh the next time you use the site, it's going to be the same code as before.
I mean, is that any different from someone like missing a character, like missing the first character of, copying and pasting equire instead of require? I mean, maybe it is, but I'm not sure it is.
Well, I mean, the thing is though that the experience is now seamlessly integrated with the Node.js website, right? So we still have all our assets all around it, and the code is now wrong, even if it does become correct when you refresh.
Gabriel,
but if you have like a form text area and you type
Gabriel,
words into it.
I've used this type of interface in other projects' documentation. It would be pretty
trying to remember
for somebody to be confused about the fact that the code that they just changed is in fact changed.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. Finish up, Sam.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate that we're being cautious, but that I don't think that particular. I don't think anybody's going to be confused about that. And again, because I don't know if you've actually used an interface like this, Gabriel, but it's not. It doesn't stick around very long. You can twiddle around with the code and change it a bit and see how it works when you change it.
W3cschools.com has that, if I'm not mistaken.
So I want to go. Colin commented that NPM already has this on their site. So what they have is, if you go to like the Lodash package page and you look in the lower right under the authors, the collaborators, there's a try on RunKit button. And I realize that we're trying to make a seamless experience where it's just right on the site or anything, right on the site. But would it, I mean, I guess this just brings up the whole link,
Yeah. So if you actually go to
advertising for RunKit, and that's what you kind of want to avoid. But I wonder if people might be more comfortable with just, under each sample code, just being a tiny, visible but not particularly, glaring button that says try and RunKit, and then it opens that. But like then we're back at the base 64ing the code or whatever kind of situation. Anyway,
expressjs.com and the Koa framework also like have the like fully integrated version if that helps at all.
That does.
Lodash.com also does, and Ramda here. I can. Sorry, it's going to take me a second to. I'm on the computer and the iPad, so I'm going to have to like send links.
Which were some of the others? I'm just adding them to the notes.
Express
and Koa.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So the Express one is kind of cool because it uses the endpoint version of this. So like it actually spins up a server that the user can hit. So unlike basically RunKit has two modes, like REPL mode where you type 5 + 5 and you get 10, and then it has server mode where like the second you hit the site, it's actually spinning up a server that anyone can hit. So like their hello world is actually like you can hit it from your phone as you're editing it on the site.
A bunch of our examples might need that too, if they were going to run, just out of side comment.
And there's a nice feature where you can, try the same code on in a different version of Node and see if it still works.
Right.
So I'm trying to make sure we've answered some of for people who aren't here, some of the questions. So privacy. So in terms of privacy concerns, what you've said is RunKit is completely trackerless. No user information is forwarded from the browser to the RunKit backend.
That will be the case in about 2 days. Again, we have like a really weird legacy stupid cookie that we used to use to save the accounts. We disabled that feature 2 years ago and then just forgot to take out the cookie. But as part of this update, that will definitely be true. And when it goes live, I will post on their steps to be able to confirm this stuff because I'm sure you'll get questions about it. So I want to have a really good reference to be able to point people to.
In terms of the communication that goes back and forth, like somehow the code must go over to that the server that it's running in, and the output must come back, right? How does that work?
WebSocket.
Okay, so
I'm not sure like the level of I'm happy to go as deep as we need to, or as you'd like, I guess is what I'm saying.
I'm just trying to try and capture in terms of like if it's just what the interaction is, because that clarifies a little bit in terms of what might be happening. It's not that we're not like taking some code that like you said that comes from the RunKit website and executing it. It's just that there'll be a WebSocket connection made, and then the code will shoot over, get executed, the results come back, and that just repeats in terms of as people edit and run the code, right?
Yeah, you have to explicitly hit run. I'm not sure if I necessarily understood the question, but yeah, like there's not like some sort of auto saving or auto sending back and forth or like auto calculating, kind of like the browser REPLs are doing now, where like it dimly says kind of what's going on. I do want to specify, just because I'm reading the chat as this is happening, the like two-step process, and again, I'm fine doing that. It's a little bit more work, but we can do it. We'll be changing on Lodash and Ramda. That's actually currently because I don't know if you've ever tried to load any sort of embed into a website 30 times, like your browser will crawl to its knees and crash. The actual thing that this update was for was to fix that specific feature so that sites like Lodash can just have all this stuff loaded from the beginning. I won't go into a ton of detail. It's technically interesting, but basically, even though there are 30 iframes, none of them are alive. There's just one manager iframe that draws into all of them. So the memory issue has gone away, and so the reason Express has it immediately when you load and Lodash doesn't is because Lodash wants 30, and that will become available in like a week. So just if one of the things that would help out is like having more of these like sites that are kind of proving that this is something people do. I'm fine either way, just pointing it out.
So just for my 2 cents on this is I don't have a it seems that lots of docs have runnable versions, runnable examples. I don't have a problem with adding that to Node's docs. I only have 2 concerns about it. One of which is that the docs are remain statically browsable, but that's already been addressed. If it's not available, it'll gracefully downgrade to you just see the example. Am I right there?
Yes, and not only that, but again, you'll actually get syntax coloring if JavaScript is turned off, which is a feature that the site doesn't currently have, since it just loads highlight.js, and that happens at runtime. So the static experience should be better.
Yeah. So that's nice. I don't know if this might be tangential to this conversation, so I don't want to bog it down, but I do not believe, I believe that we have 2 things being pushed currently, one of which is runnable examples. So whether or not they actually run with RunKit or not, each example being standalone, cut and paste, you can run it, whatever. So that's one philosophy that's being pushed hard. Another is putting an example under every single method and function in the API docs. And I believe that those are 2 trains running into a collision course. So I'm not a fan of the, like, I think we might have to choose one or the other, not both. But that's not really something specific to the RunKit embedding. Which I'm
I didn't catch that. If someone can summarize in the chat for me, I didn't catch. I didn't. I got some garble going on, and I didn't hear everything. But I kind of want to know what the 2 trains running into each other are. Someone can summarize that in the chat for me. I'd appreciate it. But I don't want to hold up the conversation, so I'll stop talking now.
I'm not sure if I heard correctly, but I do just want to. We don't believe every single method should have a runnable example or even an example necessarily. Just to make our position clear.
Right. I mean, Sam, I think they're 2 independent things. When you say that they're going to run into each other, is it that like if we decide to put examples everywhere, it makes it so that the RunKit embedding is going to be a problem, or something else?
So we're talking about RunKit for runnable examples, right?
Yeah.
Well, not all of our examples are standalone runnable.
Right. In which case that you just won't enable them with RunKit, right?
So there's going to be markdown, and I guess, so our example, when we mark up our examples inside our documentation, that markup then is going to have to include a little flag saying this is runnable or not. I don't have a problem with that. It's just a question.
I think the answer is
Currently
yes.
the markdown just, you do triple tick JavaScript, and then you can do space runnable, and then that will make it runnable. And if you leave out the runnable, it doesn't.
And that does not affect Markdown rendering.
Correct. Like on GitHub, it still shows up fine. It's completely accurate to the Markdown spec.
Yeah, it was a statement, not a question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You can add whatever you want after JavaScript space, and it won't affect rundown until there's a new line character. We're way over time on this topic, which is not to say that we have to stop talking about it if it's important and whatnot. But if we feel like we've gotten what we need out of it, we should probably move on to other things, especially because we still have a private segment.
Yeah. Does anybody have any concerns that haven't been answered that they'd want to bring up? Okay, I'll take that as a no. I mean, I think I've tried to document in the minutes the answers to most of the questions. And I guess we'll take it back to the GitHub to hopefully close on the issue.
Cool.
So thanks, Francisco, for coming
Yeah,
and helping
thank
us
you.
do that.
All right.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks. Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which is add example for Cypher update 28.383. Let's see who added that to the.
At this point, I wonder if the wise thing to do is to defer anything that doesn't need to be talked about this week, so we have time for a private segment.
I would agree. So it was Ruben who added that one to the PR. I think Sam, you commented. Yeah, on that doc. Do you think we should get into that or defer that to next time?
This is the Cypher update docs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have a little bit of time for the private conversation.
Okay.
There's an interesting interaction between the Cypher update PR and what we've just discussed, but we can leave it to next week.
Okay, so let's defer to next week. The next one, async hooks introduce async storage API 26.540. I did take a quick look. I think we have something like 9 TSC members in favor, 3 abstentions, and
We
no
should clear
objections.
Brian White's objection. Yeah.
So I think we have consensus unless, and what I said is we just bring it up here unless anybody wants to say object or suggest otherwise, we'll assume we have consensus on that.
Seconded.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we no longer have an objection, or we can remove the objection, but I don't think we can, it's not landable right now. I don't
Right.
think we.
Sure. That wasn't the question. We were
The only
just
question
like,
is whether we were going to get rid of the objection, because so that work could continue on. If the objection was going to stand, there was no reason for work to continue.
Yep.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure it doesn't get interpreted as like this is the PR that's landing now.
No.
But it looks like it doesn't even have enough approvals right now. It used to, but it looks like people just
Right. There's a competing PR. Yeah, there's a competing PR, and there are comments that need to be addressed.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
So yeah, I'll try and be as careful as I can to basically say on this specific question, we've answered that. But that doesn't mean that this is ready to land. It's just that we want to land something.
And if anyone feels like you have been insufficiently clear, they can follow up with a clarifying comment.
Yes. Okay, so that one, so I'm going to say being covered by this guy, so that's good. So we've already talked about the first one at GC, and then the last one is actually that one 791. Should that just be closed? Sam, I think that's yours. HackerOne monthly status meeting.
I don't know that it was mine, but yeah, it should have had the TSC agenda removed from it.
Or just the agenda removed, or the class, or the label. I guess do you want it closed or just the label removed?
The label removed at the very least.
Okay, label's gone. We'll leave it at that. The last one was the social media accounts. I don't think there's been any substantial discussion since then. So again, we'll just defer to next time. And at that, we will close out with our public session. So let me stop the stream.